The German subjunctive is a grammatical mood that shows indirect speech and hypothetical situations, wishes, and politeness. It's the mood that expresses an outcome that can be described in writing or speech. And in German, there are two forms of the subjunctive: Konjunktiv 1, K1, and Konjunktiv 2, K2. K1 is mainly used for reported speech or indirect speech, while K2 is used for hypothetical or unreal situations, politeness, and wishes. And in this video, I'll explain both. Konjunktiv 1 is the subjunctive for reported indirect speech, used to report what someone else said without verifying it to oneself and allowing the listener to maintain distance. For instance, sagt, habe keine Zeit, he says he has no time, is a statement in Konjunktiv 1. The subject speaks indirectly about what someone else says without first knowing it, which creates doubt and subjectivity. However, it's important to understand the formation of Konjunktiv 1 for regular and irregular verbs. When it comes to forming Konjunktiv 1, German takes the present tense stem of a verb and adds the following endings. Ich gets Du gets est. Sie es get Wir gets en. Ihr gets et. And sie get en. These are the endings for regular verbs in Konjunktiv 1, but it's very important to not confuse them with present tense conjugation. Konjunktiv 1 has its own special set of endings that are different from the present tense, but for many verbs, the forms overlap. Just to compare them, the forms in the present tense conjugation have their own endings, but the conjugations in Konjunktiv 1 are different. Some forms do overlap and are the same, but remember, they may look like present tense conjugation, which is why it may get confusing. Still, the forms are different. The first person singular and the first and third person plural forms of Konjunktiv 1 are usually identical to the indicative, and because of this, German will often switch to the second subjunctive to avoid ambiguity. So, Konjunktiv 1 is not the same as present tense conjugation, but it can look like it in some cases. The unique endings set it apart, and when it looks the same, German will switch to the second subjunctive. Take the verb machen, which I showed previously. To put the verb in Konjunktiv 1, we take the present tense stem and add the endings that fit in the subjunctive. Ich mache. Du machest. Sie es mache. Wir machen. Ihr machet. Sie machen. This is the general pattern for verbs in Konjunktiv 1, and when it looks like the indicative, German will switch to the second subjunctive. Still, we have to see how other verbs will form in the subjunctive, such as sein, haben, and werden, which are very common. Sein is an irregular verb in Konjunktiv 1, and in the mood, it will look like this. Ich sei. Du seiest. Sie es sei. Wir seien. Ihr seid. Sie seien. The formation of sein follows the basic endings in the mood, and we can compare it to the present tense. In this case, you can see how Konjunktiv 1 really stands out and isn't just regular conjugation. Haben in Konjunktiv 1 will look like this. Ich habe. Du habest. Sie es habe. Wir haben. Ihr habet. Sie haben. In this case, the verb simply uses the basic endings in the mood. Werden in Konjunktiv 1 will look like this. Ich werde. Du werdest. Sie es werde. Wir werden. Ihr werdet. Sie werden. This is how Konjunktiv 1 is formed in German, and to make sure we fully understand it, let's have some examples with different verbs. Let's use the verb sagen. As you can see, sagen in this context is regular, so the pattern is very clear. Now, let's see haben. In this case, haben shows a clear Konjunktiv 1, especially in du and ihr. Now, let's see sein, which is the most common verb in indirect speech. This one really shows the unique form of conjunctive eins, and it's why sein is used a lot. This is how the first subjunctive, Konjunktiv 1, works in German. And now, let's see the second subjunctive, Konjunktiv 2. Konjunktiv 2 is a subjunctive used for hypothetical situations, wishes, and politeness, and it's more common than Konjunktiv 1. However, the formation of this subjunctive is different because there are two ways to form it. The first way involves the conjunctive endings e, est, en, et, en. In addition, this way will take irregular strong verbs which will have irregular changes. Using this way in Konjunktiv 2, we will take the verb's forms from the Präteritum and add umlauts to them if possible. Let's take the verb haben. To put this verb in Konjunktiv 2, we will take its Präteritum form and add umlauts. Ich hätte. Du hättest. Sie, es hätte. Wir hätten. Ihr hättet. Sie hätten. The conjugations follow the conjunctive endings along with umlauts. This is the first way to form the second subjunctive, using irregular strong verbs and adding umlauts to them if possible. Another irregular verb in Konjunktiv 2 is sein, which will look like this. Ich wäre. Du wärest. Sie, es wäre. Wir wären. Ihr wäret. Sie wären. Another irregular verb is kommen. Ich käme. Du kämest. Sie, es käme. Wir kämen. Ihr kämet. Sie kämen. Another irregular verb is finden. Ich finde. Du findest. Sie, es finde. Wir finden. Ihr findet. Sie finden. A different irregular verb that doesn't have umlauts is gehen, which will look like this. Ich ginge. Du gingest. Sie, es ginge. Wir gingen. Ihr ginget. Sie gingen. This is the first way to form Konjunktiv 2, and as a note, German has many more irregular strong verbs in this mood. Showing all of them would be redundant, because there are so many of them, so it's something that you have to get a feel for through practice. In case you see an unusual change to a verb with umlauts, it's probably subjunctive in Konjunktiv 2. Now, let's see the second way to form the mood. The second way to form Konjunktiv 2 has a construction with wurde plus an infinitive. This pattern is specifically used when the original verb doesn't have a clear Konjunktiv 2 form, or sometimes it can be used to make context sound more clear, or in case you don't know how to use the first way. When applying it in context, it's mainly used to talk about unreal past situations following the German conditionals and if clauses, which I showed in a previous video. This is the main role of Konjunktiv 2, which is used for hypothetical situations. However, more concepts need to be known about it. When using modal verbs in this mood, their conjugations will be irregular, specifically the verbs dürfen, können, mögen, müssen, sollen, and wollen, also known as the magic six. Their changes in Konjunktiv 2 are pretty self-explanatory, so their conjugations can be formed intuitively. Still, you should know that the mood generally talks about wishes, and when doing so, there is an easy pattern to remember. In the unreal present, we can say, Ich wünschte, ich wäre ein Vogel, using an I wish construction with sein in Konjunktiv 2. At the same time, we can say a sentence in the unreal past, like Ich wünschte, ich hätte das gesehen, also using I wish, along with the verb haben. This is how the second subjunctive is formed in German. It's used for hypothetical situations, unreal events, wishes, and politeness, using Präteritum verbs with umlauts or wurde plus an infinitive. In this mood, statements utilize conditionals and if clauses, which again, I showed in a previous video. Now, to fully conclude the mood and the lesson, let's finish with examples in Konjunktiv 2 that use different verbs and forms. For regular verbs, we take the preteritum form, add the basic conjunctive endings and umlauts, if possible. Here, we have the verb machen. Ich machte das, wenn ich Zeit hätte. Du machtest das besser als ich. Machte es anders. In this case, machen does not need an umlaut because there is no vowel that can take it. Here, we have the verb leben. Wir lebten friedlich zusammen. Ihr lebtet besser in Berlin. Sie lebten früher in Wien. Leben also does not need an umlaut. Now, let's have some examples with the magic 6 and irregular verbs like sein, haben, werden, können, dürfen, and müssen. Ich wäre gern dort. Du wärst willkommen. Wäre stolz. Wir hätten mehr Zeit gebraucht. Ihr hättet das gewusst. Sie hätten gewonnen. Now, let's have some examples with würde plus an infinitive. Du würdest lachen. Würde bleiben. Wir würden warten. Ihr würdet gehen. Sie würden helfen. As a note, you should know that the pattern with würde plus an infinitive is widely used in spoken German and often replaces Konjunktiv 2 forms, especially with weak or mixed verbs. Now, let's finish with the magic 6. Ich konnte dir helfen. Du konntest recht haben. Durfte bleiben. Wir durften gehen. Ihr musstet zuhören. Sie mussten sich beeilen. This is how Konjunktiv 2 works in German, and the key takeaways from this mood is to use the preteritum for regular verbs while adding umlauts and conjunctive endings for irregular ones. The magic 6 are most often used in real life, and the construction with würde plus an infinitive is a replacement in the mood when in doubt on how to form Konjunktiv 2. Overall, this is how the subjunctives fully work in German.